Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the EV Charging Podcast. We're here at Everything Electric in Melbourne. I'm Jeff Sykes.
I'm Dan Carson.
And today we're recording from the conference, which is one of the biggest EV shows and also home electrification conferences that is run in Australia. Dan, we've been here. This is the third day. What are the takeaways so far?
Well, these are big, exhausting days. We've had a huge number of people come through the floor. It's the first year this event's been held in Melbourne, and we've heard from the event organisers that it's the biggest first time in any city that they've had. So yeah, we've had some great chats with people coming through, talking about solar choice, learning about home electrification. But some of the big takeaways have been just how many vehicles are on the market now. We've got EVs here on the floor from all the big manufacturers, some smaller manufacturers. We've got some classic cars being retrofitted as EVs, and some also really interesting smaller mobility like electric scooters, electric motorbikes, micro-mobility. Basically everything electric is here, hence the name of the event.
Yes, I've got my eye on that BYD Shark. As soon as they bring out an all-battery version, I reckon I'll be first on the queue. Also like the look of the Xpeng G7. Very nice car. It's a good opportunity to jump in the interior and even take a bunch out for a test drive. So we're going to do something a little bit different with the podcast today. Instead of having an individual guest, we've got a number of different guests that we're going to bring to the show for a 3 to 5 minute segment. It should be a nice, diverse group or a bunch of interviews and a good opportunity to get a bit of a flavour of what's happening at the show without having to come.
Yeah, so join us. We're going to be walking around the floor, talking to some of the exhibitors, learning about some of the new tech, and hearing just a few minutes from the people who are doing pretty interesting things to help move the transition to electrification forward. Here we go.
Nathan, thanks for joining us here. You're the founder of Test EV. Tell us a little bit about that company and what you do.
Yeah, I'm the provider of EV battery health testing across Australia and New Zealand. That's developed by a company called AVILOO out of Austria. The world's leader at this sort of stuff, and I'm happy to be building a network across Australia and New Zealand for consumers to get hold of that battery health testing.
Okay, and so you're testing batteries. So what are the types of users that are interested in testing their batteries? Is that part of selling it on to another user?
Yeah, typically it's around that used car space when I want to buy or sell an EV. Great car, but what about the battery health? This answers that question. It's also a great time when you're looking at coming up towards the end of your warranty period and you're trying to work out whether or not you've got a warranty conversation with your manufacturer. That's a great time to get testing as well. Or if you've got a problem and you're not really sure what's going on, another great time to get a battery test.
Great. And without getting too technical, what goes into testing a battery? What sort of things are you looking for?
Yeah, look, we're looking for a couple of things. We're looking about how much energy is available to be held in that battery. That's our battery health. It's typically shown as a percentage of the original 100%. So you might have a 90% battery health. That's one part. We're also looking at things like the cell individual voltage balancing. So not too technical, but the battery needs to be really well balanced. And if it's not, it's going to hurt one of the cells, and that's going to be a problem. So, and then there's several other systems related things that we test when we do our flash test.
Yeah, and you must have tested a lot of batteries, and I think we know one of the classic myths of EVs in general is that the battery's going to die in a few years. And what sort of trends are you seeing, and what's the overall sort of takeaways from testing all these batteries?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a great life of our batteries. We're typically seeing many hundreds of thousands of Ks out of vehicles. I've got lots of anecdotal stories. One of our customers, Pickles, they've got a whole load of testing that they've done, over 1,000 tests in the last couple of years. And the average battery test of a result out of those vehicles that they're putting through their auctions is 96% healthy. Another one would be a 400,000 kilometre Model 3 that's been run by an Uber driver that I know quite well, and he had a battery health of 82%. So, these really good markers of how well these batteries are going to last. But saying that, about 1% to 2% of the vehicles that we test do have faults in them, so it's not like it doesn't happen.
Right, and so that 84% after 400,000 Ks.
Yeah,
Oh, it's 82. And that's miles ahead of what they're guaranteeing through the warranty.
That's right. So the warranty of most EVs is the vehicle needs to be able to provide 70% battery health up until 8 years and 160,000 Ks. And so if you're dipping below that 70% health, it's a warranty conversation, and we're not even seeing anywhere near that in 400,000 Ks in this particular vehicle's example. And many others. I had a Polestar just the other day, 200,000 Ks, and it was 90% health. So we've got some really great figures out there. But I think also we're going to start to see the value of an EV be somewhat impacted by how healthy the battery is. So if you've got one that's a little bit more worn out as such, it might be worth a little less than one that's a bit healthier.
Yeah, interesting. And so if we go to the other side of the spectrum, that rare 1% to 2% that have a fault, what sort of things are going wrong in those batteries?
Yeah, we find all sorts of things. We find battery degradation, so the energy that's being stored in that battery has become less and less, and so that's one sort of failure mode. The other one is battery cells, individual cells in the battery pack that are lower in voltage and have started to collapse from an electrical point of view. So that's another big one, and your battery's only as good as the weakest link, so that's something there. And the other one is we see some sensors sometimes fail, both current and voltage sensors. So these things all sort of lead towards, is the battery in a healthy spot? Sometimes we even see the software as the wrong version and causes some dramas too. So there's several things that we're looking at in there.
Okay, and you may not want to go on the record for this, but of those 1% to 2%, is there particular brands that you see coming up more often than others?
Look, there are a few brands that are probably well known for not having the same longevity as others. I think there's some key components there. There's the sort of chemistry that the vehicles have got in their batteries. There's also the management of the electronic management and the temperature management of a battery are very large parts of their health outcome. And I think it's a bit like humans, right? If we eat well and exercise well and don't live in the desert, then we'll probably look a little bit better and healthier as we go on. Whereas something that is heavily stressed might end up being looking like it's had a long paper round. So we definitely see that with EV batteries.
Thanks, Nathan. Why don't you give us a bit of a talk through some of the equipment that you test these batteries with?
Yeah, so we've got a bespoke device that is made by AVILOO in Austria, and this device plugs into the vehicle using a connector, typically for the OBD port, or in the case of some vehicles where we have to add other cabling, we've got those other cables available to us. And then with a 3-minute static test, the vehicle gathers all of the data. It puts it through into a package of data that we would then send back via SIM card on board to our servers, and we check that data, 100,000 pieces of information, and that will then help generate our test here, which will give us our battery health, how the vehicle compares to other vehicles we've tested, and a whole bunch of other techie data that tells us that it's in good health, or if there's an issue, we'll detect it and provide plain English feedback on what that looks like.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for taking us through that. So, hi guys, we're here with Ross de Rango. Now, our listeners are going to remember you, Ross, from the early episode where we dove into EV charging in apartments. And that was when you were in your role at the EVC, the Electric Vehicle Council. So times have changed. You're now with your new company, Vehicle Charging Solutions Australia. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Vehicle Charging Solutions Australia is a new business founded by myself and my partner, Dave Fenwick. Both of us worked at NHB for a long time, and we've looked at the challenge not of apartment complex EV charging, but of EV charging when you don't have anywhere on your property to park your car at all. Our new solution is aimed at solving for EV charging at home for people who park on the street in front of their house.
Great. So we've got a pretty clever looking boom system here. So for our listeners, can you give us a bit of an overview of how this system works?
Yeah, sure. So the system's comprised of a post that's a couple metres tall and goes in the front yard of the property, just behind the front fence. At the top of it, there's a swivelling, counterweighted lever arrangement that lets a boom fold down onto the property when not in use and fold out over the footpath at 2.5 metres above the footpath to carry the cable to the car. So if you imagine looking down the street at a post behind the front fence, a horizontal boom extending out from that post to bring electricity from the home to your car, letting you charge from your own solar panels or overnight off-peak. That's what we're offering.
Right, so solving the problem of those pesky EV owners who run the extension cord out of the garage or out of the front door and into the car across the street, and creating a trip hazard, of course, for everyone coming down the road.
Yeah, that's right. So as one of the guys that gets involved in electrical safety standards, I'm not a big fan of extension lead left lying on the footpath. This is not a good idea. It is exactly the sort of thing that's going to happen, though, if EV drivers don't have a better option available. And so it's up to us as the businesses that are in this space to invent that better option, bring it to market, make it available, and work with local governments so that we have permission to deploy it.
And so I understand you've been working with a particular council to trial this solution, and how's things going so far?
Yeah, so we're doing our initial trial with the city of Marybeck. Marybeck have given us permission to roll out 20 installations of this kind. We opened up expressions of interest at the end of September, and we have had 70 expressions of interest since then for our 20 places in the trial. It's awesome. We're looking forward to deploying all 20, getting a successful result and a successful outcome, and then rolling on to business as usual. And then from there to other local councils, other local governments that are keen to let us do similar trials.
And now, if I was speaking to anyone else, I would be wondering if this is breaking any rules or regulations, but I know you're fully across that. But is there any sort of regs that would cover this type of device?
Yes, all of the usual electrical safety rules apply. The electrical product here is a Mode 2 charging cable, 15 metres length, 10 amps. That's imported by us under the standard arrangements with EES, RCM marking and all of that. The rules relating to deploying things over footpaths in public space. In Victoria, that's the Road Management Act, Section 121. The agreements that we do between the City of Marybeck and the resident who is getting it installed are done under that legislative instrument. If anyone really wants to get into the weeds, we can do it off the podcast. But that's probably enough boring legalese for this episode.
No, that's great. That's great. And so I imagine this being already sounding like a success in terms of customer demand, and you'll flow on to other councils and other agreements and spread it the way across Australia.
Yeah, that's correct. And if there's listeners who'd like to help us with that mission, our website is www.vcsa.au. If you're a person who doesn't have off-street parking and you'd like to sign up and register with us there, as and when we get to your local council area, we'll reach out to you. We also use that list to inform which local councils we approach. So what we're doing now at this stage and at this show is building out that list of which local government areas have populations of people like Marybeck's who, if we offer this, are ready to go. So if the listeners are out there and who are interested in helping us, jump on the website, register your interest, and we'll talk to you as and when we can deploy in your area.
Great. And I highly recommend that our listeners do that if this is a solution that'll help. As we know, Ross is a wealth of knowledge in this area, so looking forward to seeing way more of these on the street. It'll create a nice little tunnel to walk through as you go down the pavement.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ross. So I'm standing here with Scott, one of the founders of Revival EV. Scott, give us a bit of an idea of what you guys are doing.
So we convert classic cars to electric. So basically anything sort of pre-1995 to electric. We take out the original petrol engine and we scan the inside of the car or inside of the engine bay, and we drop in an electric motor that's suitable for that vehicle and a battery pack in the front and the back of the car.
Right, so anyone that's sitting on a classic car, of which we know there's many in Australia, and they're probably plugging away a lot of money in maintenance and costs to keep that car on the road.
Yeah.
They can modernise the vehicle and future-proof it by putting in an electric engine. Is the target market?
Yeah, look, we estimate that based on some numbers that there's about 1.3 million registered classic cars in Australia. So if you add the ones that are sitting in garages, it's probably double that or 3 times that. And so what we're trying to do is get them out of the garage, get them back on the road again. You know, so a lot of people will have a collection of cars and they might already have an electric daily driver. And then all of a sudden in their head, they start to think, well, hang on, what if I had that reliability, that performance of an electric vehicle, but in something that's really cool and stylish? It's the best of both worlds. So that's what we drive to do.
All right, and just for our listeners' benefit, we're standing next to a pretty cool looking BMW, which says here it's from 1972. Give us a bit of an overview of what you've done with this car.
Yeah, so this is a 1972 BMW 2002 model. It was a pretty tired 2-litre automatic car, 50-year-old engine. Suspension was, also very, very loose. So what we did is took all of that, took about 360 kilograms of petrol engine, radiator, fuel tank, fans, brake boosters out of the car. And then we've dropped in a 120 kilowatt motor. And then there's a reduction gearbox connected to that, and it uses the original driveline diff at the back. None of the motor mounts, we use the original motor mounts, so none of the chassis has been modified, so it's a fully reversible conversion. We marry that, in this particular case, we marry that to a 42 kilowatt hour battery, and that gives us about 250 kilometre range in the city.
Which is probably more than enough for these people who like to parade their car around the beaches and get out there.
Yeah, it's definitely enough for a weekend drive. We do have the ability to fit CCS2 fast charging to these vehicles as well. We haven't in this particular one, but we can fit fast charging. This just uses a standard 6.6 kilowatt charger, as you would with any of the other electric vehicles around here.
Right, so you're not beholden to plugging into a regular power socket. You can actually use a fast charger wall-mounted.
You can use a regular AC charger, so the 6.6 kilowatt charger.
Right, which is what most people are doing anyway at their own homes. Yeah. Great. Well, thanks so much, Scott, for talking to us. And if anyone wants to find out more about converting a car or what you guys do, where should they go?
Yep, so the website address is revival-ev. There's also an Instagram site as well that they can visit.
Great. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you.
G'day, guys. I'm here with Sam from Savage Motorcycles, and I'm standing next to a very cool-looking electric motorbike. Sam, can you start by telling us a little bit about Savage?
So we're a Australian-based company, and what I've got behind me is the C-Series. So this has been 9 years in development, and we've designed this from the ground up here in Australia, and we actually build these down in West Melbourne as well.
Oh, that's great, Sam. And so for people that are interested, you mentioned it's been 9 years in development. I think you mentioned to me earlier that it's going to be available in Australia very soon. What's the timeline look like?
So we're actually in market now. So we've just started delivering bikes this year.
Okay. Oh, great. And and we've got behind us a big screen here, which for the benefit of our listeners, looks like a pretty cool way for people to design their bike. How does that work?
So what we decided to go with was a cafe-style motorcycle as our kind of flagship model. And one of the big things, being like a smaller company as well, we can work very agile. We haven't got this complexity of production at the moment. So one of the things we offer is a full custom built-to-order motorcycle. So each person gets to go through, select what kind of bodywork they want to go for. We do custom paint options as well now at the moment. And we're actually exploring how we can diversify more how many things can be changed on the configurator for each order.
That's great, Sam. And so just to give us an idea with an electric motorcycle, obviously there's going to be some big differences between most people on a petrol motorcycle. So what are some of the things that people can expect on an electric motorcycle?
So, I'll talk to the product. So we've obviously got no clutch, no gear selector. So the left-hand side is very, very cruisy to ride the bike. You're not kind of going through those gear changes. With that comes less maintenance, less things to go wrong because there's less moving components. It's direct drive from the motor to the rear wheel, and it's a belt drive as well. So again, very, very minimal maintenance. You've got your tyres, your brakes, and your brake fluids, and eventually your suspension. They're probably the only things you'd be actually having to do in terms of maintenance.
That's great. So it's very low maintenance. I imagine like the difference that we see with electric cars and their petrol equivalents, there's possibly some torque and performance benefits that people would expect as well.
Yeah, big time. So it's single speed. So it's crack on the throttle and you just hold on and you get 200 newton-meters of torque to the rear wheel and it tops out about 180 kilometers an hour.
Wow. And what are we talking about for range?
So 200 kilometers, and that's mixed city and highway. So a lot of people are a lot more familiar with the EV world now. Obviously, it depends what kind of riding conditions you're in. If you're doing a lot of stop-start and then a bit of highway, that's how much we reckon on the average. And then if you're doing about 100 kilometers continuous, you're looking at about 130 kilometers range.
Oh, that's great. And so in terms of the show, I keep seeing a lot of people over here, and it seems like you haven't stopped speaking to people all weekend. So has it been a good show, and is there interest in the bike?
Yeah, very much so. And I think we've stood out a lot because it seems to be like a lot of like family SUVs. I think that's where the Australian market's been leaning towards for the last few years. And I mean, look, we've got a high-performance two-wheeler electric motorcycle, which not many people really see in the market, even worldwide at the moment. It's still very, very new.
So the Honda and the Kawasaki's, they don't have anything out yet that sort of fits in this performance category?
So a lot of the big OEMs, they do seem to be a bit quiet. Kawasaki's been dabbling on the lower CC equivalent kind of range. Honda's released something quite similar and quite surprising. They've gone for very similar specs to us as well. So it's quite interesting to see that a big OEM like that's kind of going the same direction as us.
That's great to hear, Sam. Well, great to have you on the show, and I hope all goes well with the future of Savage.
Yeah, thank you.
We're at Everything Electric on the floor, and I'm here with Nick from a company called Thermal Dawn. Not a household name yet. Nick, tell us about Thermal Dawn.
Yeah, so we're an Australian startup. We're the first and only thermal energy storage company in Australia. And what we're building is a thermal battery for the home. So we store thermal energy. We're not storing electricity like a normal battery. And that's because 2/3 of a household's energy consumption are air conditioning and hot water. So we focus on those loads to save households money and keep everyone comfortable.
Okay, so for someone who's never heard the term thermal storage, so we've got two boxes behind us.
Yep.
What are they doing?
Yeah, so our system uses a reverse cycle heat pump that runs during the day off your excess solar. And that puts heating and cooling into our thermal storage, our thermal battery, which keeps hot or cold. So that means we can turn the heat pump off at night so it's not using peak power. But when everyone gets home to turn the air conditioning on, we've already got that heating and cooling saved up. So we can use that and circulate it through fan units inside the home to keep it comfortable while saving power.
Okay, so it must be a pretty well insulated unit. Like, how long can it keep hot water hot or cold water cold?
Yeah, so the goal for this unit, it's a little bit like hot water cylinder. So it's about the same level of insulation. So we're planning on using the heat within 12 or 24 hours. And at that time period, the losses are pretty much negligible.
Okay, so I guess best case scenario is it's a bright sunny day. I've got a family of 7 people, all the kids running around, and I know that everyone's going to be showering at the same time tonight when it's going to be expensive to use electricity. Mm-hmm. We don't use gas in the house. Yep. So what I'm doing here is getting free electricity in the middle of the day, heating my water, so that when nighttime comes around, the heat's already stored, ready to be used, and I'm not having to draw from the grid.
Exactly. But more than that, you've got a system which can heat your hot water, but it can also provide heating and cooling for your air conditioning and keeping the house comfortable. So it's one system that can do it all and tackle 2/3 of your energy consumption.
Yeah, that number's probably going to surprise some people. Everyone knows that electricity bills are going up. Everyone knows that gas is crazy expensive. But 2/3 of the average householder's electricity use is going towards heating and cooling.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a big load. I mean, we all want to stay comfortable at home, and we don't think people should be compromising on comfort and energy savings. So you really can have it all.
And I mean, it looks relatively straightforward, from standing outside here looking at it.
Yep.
Is it pretty straightforward to install?
100%. So we are just finished a lot of our testing and product development. So we're launching the product next year. We're a Sydney-based startup, and we are working with installers on the installation process. So we're going to be bringing it to market next year, and that's something we're ensuring that it does, is that it's easy to install. One day, simple.
Okay, and so who's going to install this in my home? Is it going to be a plumber? Is it going to be an electrician? Is it going to be an AC guy?
Yep, it's
hopefully all of them are going to be selling your product, I guess.
Yeah, that's the plan. We want as many people capable of selling this product as possible and minimizing the complexity so that the wiring is simple and the electrician will do that, and then we can have a plumber basically connecting the different lines.
Okay. And it sounds like you're the first product like this in Australia coming to market, in the near future. Is it a space that we should expect to see getting busier, or is this something that's taken off overseas and we're just behind the times in Australia?
I think it's something that you sometimes see in larger scale industrial air conditioning units, but because in Australia we've got so much solar, so much distributed energy, I think it's something that's definitely going to be getting more attention in the future for sure.
Okay, and if people want to find out a bit more, maybe read up about how it works in more detail or let you know that it's something they might be interested in next year, how can they find more info?
Yeah, you can head over to thermaldawn.com, follow us over there. We post regular updates, join our mailing lists. We are taking pre-orders for folks who want to get on board, support us on our journey, and also have input into the product development so that we can hit the market next year with our system.
All right, very exciting. Thanks for chatting with us.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, I'm here with Shaz from My Energy, and our listeners are going to remember you, Shaz, because we had you on with Pierce, and we were talking mainly at that time about My Energy Zappy, one of the more popular EV chargers in Australia. But you're here at Everything Electric at the moment, and we're standing next to the Libby. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you may remember from the podcast, if any of you made it all the way through without nodding off, sorry about that. But no, it was a great show and thanks for having us on. So My Energy, first and foremost, was founded as a home energy management company, or an ecosystem company, as I like to think of it. So that's really thinking about behind the meter orchestration of devices. Homes have got lots more complicated, right? So where it used to be that all your power just came from the grid, now people are generating their own with solar, storing their own with the battery, and then the loads in the home are getting bigger and bigger and more of them as we add in things like EV chargers, and our hot water electrifies, and so does our heating, etc. So I guess when we talk about ecosystem and home energy management, we see ourselves as a company set around to orchestrate that and make sure that all those items under one umbrella are working together in perfect orchestration, or as near to perfect as we can make it happen, to optimize self-consumption, so using generated solar energy and reducing your reliance on the grid and making it ultimately as green and as cheap as possible for the homeowner. And I guess that's a very long-winded way of basically saying this is Libby, our home battery. So that completes that ecosystem for us here at My Energy. So that's the final missing piece of the puzzle that allows our customers to have that whole ecosystem and that holistic view and let everything work together in one place.
So that goes to help customers solve the problem of needing one app for your battery, one app for your EV charger, one app for your hot water system, and all the other bits and bobs. So I assume a customer of My Energy can see everything and control everything through a single interface and app.
Absolutely. So yes, all the My Energy products, single app, and you can very easily just at the touch of a button change prioritization. So you can decide, hey, I've got excess solar today. Where do I want to go first? Am I putting it into the hot water tank if you've got the Eddy, filling it with storage if you've got the Libby, or putting it straight in the car if you've got the Zappy? And I think one thing for consumers to watch out for, do the research. If you even do see ecosystem associated with some brands, even in those scenarios, I've heard of systems that you require 2 or 3 different apps, and then they don't necessarily talk together all from one brand as well. So ensuring that's in one centralized place is really important.
And another thing that we always look at when we're reviewing batteries at Solar Choice is what sort of local presence and support system do customers have. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of Chinese batteries and different types of batteries enter the market. And at that very early phase, they often only have a few roaming support staff, or maybe it's all done through an importer. So you've obviously built up a significant team here. Part of that's to support the Zappy, which is already in production. But can you give us a bit of an idea of how you've grown over the last couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. So My Energy's been trading in Australia for, I think, over 4 years now. I moved out here 2 years ago as well, and I was previously with My Energy in the UK and Europe before that. We've got a Melbourne-based support team. All our call centre is onshore, and we don't just support our wholesalers and installers, but we also support end consumers as well. So we really are a catch-all for all sorts of questions and queries and technical support where needed. And you're absolutely right. People can look at a data sheet and look at the specifications of a battery, and that's the hardware element, I guess. And it's almost this Venn diagram when picking a product like this, or I use the analogy of like a Topps trump card. So you want to make sure the hardware and the feature set is like ticked, but also software as we get into this HEMS piece and this home orchestration is very important. And we've obviously got the tick there because that's where we come from. That's our pedigree. And then there's a few other things to consider. Support is a massive one. What does that look like in a country? How long's that company been around? What does their support look like? We've won multiple awards over the last couple of years for our installer customer support and consumer customer support. The My Energy experience should be lift the phone, call the number, and you get through to one of our advisors based in Melbourne, and they can talk you through any issues. And again, it goes back to a lot of companies make a lot of big claims. I'd say to people, if they've got a short list of the top 3 to 5 batteries and support's important to them, try cold calling them and see how quickly their call centers answer. And it's interesting to see how the claims match the reality, but I'm very confident in our team's ability to deliver that.
I like that. That's a good test. Shaz, thanks for your time as always. I hope the show's been good, and anyone that wants to find out more about My Energy, we can send them across to your website and they can find out about the Libby, the Zappy, the Eddy, the Harvey, and I assume more to come.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
So that's a wrap. Hope you enjoyed those quick snippets from the Everything Electric Conference in Melbourne. They have another show coming up in Sydney in March next year, where there's a possibility that Dan and I will be recording the podcast live from the events. Quick thanks to all the listeners who came up to Dan and I over the weekend. It's always great to get some feedback on the show and meet some of our audience. We'll be back to our regular format next week with another exciting guest, so stay tuned. This show has been brought to you by Solar Choice, Australia's online quote comparison tool for solar batteries, EV chargers, aircon, and heat pump hot water systems. Thanks for listening. Catch you on the next one.